Can I have your attention, please? Our next speaker is getting ready to come up here. He's going to go out in the hallway and yell at everybody, tell them to get in here and sit down. We have yet again, not only another snazzy dresser, clearly him and Bob coordinated today, but yes, another legend in the industry. And I feel very fortunate to be able to be up here. I go to a lot of these events and do this a lot. And, you know, we have a lot of talkers and influencers and stuff come on. But to have the level and the scope of knowledge that you guys have in this room today is bar none. You know, it's people like Jeff and Bob and the Julian Sprungs of the world that really laid the foundation for what our hobby is today and helped get it to become as readily available for the consumers or people to have local fish stores. So it's really, really awesome to have these guys up here sharing their knowledge and helping spread and continuing, even after all these years, continuing to grow this hobby. So coming up on stage, we have Mr. Jeff Turner. He's talking about the evolution of the marine aquarium trade. His talk will be a focus on his firsthand experience of growing up and collecting fish with his dad, building and installing home aquariums from the late 50s through today. And if you don't know who Jeff is, inevitably you do. He's the owner of ChemiPure, Jellyfish Art, which hands down one of my favorite new product, or not new products, but one of the favorite products I've seen more and more at the shows. Rad and everything, located at Boyd Enterprises here in Florida. Longtime member and supporter of the Florida Marine Aquarium Society, and passionate aquarists since the 50s, reefing for over 4 decades, 4 or 5?
I wasn't born in the 50s.
I don't know, that's what somebody wrote. Who wrote this? 60s,
Probably my
70s?
wife trying to dig a hole for me.
That's it. Anyways, long-time reefer, yet again a legend in the hobby. Big round of applause, everybody, for Jeff.
Thank you. Okay, so first slide you're going to see is a picture of the Florida Marine Aquarium Society's annual show booklet from 1956. I pulled that out of the archives 2 days ago and scanned it. And the trade goes way back when. Dick Boyd actually is quoted writing an article in there from California, where he lived at that time. And here we go. This is probably into the early 60s. Just tropical fish collecting. My dad and a buddy of his, that's what we used to have, is a little float and a bucket with holes in it, and we'd go tropical fish collecting right off Miami Beach and all over South Florida. Your classic mask and guys with some nets in their hands and going after French angels and Beau Gregories and things. There's a guy catching probably a jawfish on the bottom in the sand. And it's very early times of tropical fish collecting. Here's an image of the Aquarium Society, basically showing the whole process from years ago of what we did. Here's what an aquarium looked like at that time in the very early 60s. It's a shot in Miami. And notice the guy holding the sailfish as well. So lots of history there, catching tropicals. As a kid, literally at 7 years old, I caught my first jewel damsel at Ajax Reef and a 4-eyed butterfly at Rodriguez Key. And here is Carey's Fort in the very early 60s from the water, going underwater. They had acrylic housings. This was, I think, before the Nikonis camera came out. I remember my dad had one of the very first ones. And then here's what Carey's Fort looked like in the very early 60s. And I have other images of them too, but just put a couple in to show. But you can see the elkhorn coral, you know, with its branches growing up towards the surface, really intense. At that time, I literally was just born, 62. My dad had a little fish shop spot over on Lincoln Road on Miami Beach. So if you go to Lincoln Road now, property values are through the roof. But years ago, he had a little public display, and that's what we did. We had dead coral that we collected, significant amounts of it, and there were people that were actually harvesting live coral off Elliott Key and the Florida Keys, bring it home, put it in a bucket, bleach it, and then put it in your aquarium. So that was probably not the best practice, but we learned a lot about what not to do. Even in that aquarium right there, you can see pieces of pillar coral. Here I am, the young tropical fish collector. with a net, I'm going to guess we're in Grand Bahama. We'd fly over there. This is certainly, again, before the Lacey Act that changed things. I think it was 74. This is probably 69, I'm going to guess. And then, of course, my lovely wife, Jolene, doing the same thing. We didn't know each other at that time. I'm going to guess she's 4 years old or 5 years old. But her dad had a fish store too. So that's how the whole thing started. And there she is again with a whole bunch of undersized dolphin attached to her dad's boat in the front yard. He didn't eat fish, but he caught fish. And this is where kind of the whole thing really kind of restarted for me. I'm the short guy still in this image. From 1971, my brother and I won Best in Show at the Florida Marine Aquarium Society. It was a big deal. And I was 9 years old. My brother's first Royal Gromma was in there. I did the aquascaping in the tank. That was my big forte. And we had live coral. So it was called Natural Balance Aquariums at that time in the early 70s. And then abruptly everything stopped because the Lacey Act went into effect and we couldn't catch coral anymore, live coral. Or we didn't really even know what live rock was. So these are the types of aquariums we built. And again, bought coral that's harvested from the reef. We'd bleach it and take it out monthly or every other month, or whenever it got dirty with algae, we'd call it dirty. And just endless amounts of aquariums. I'm going to tell you, thousands of images of the aquarium trade from the 50s all the way currently to today. And you're going to see a ton of them. This was a cube tank, 24, 24, 24 inches, into a metal frame stand that my dad designed. This is the rec bar. Anybody who's old enough to know Miami Beach. This was on Collins Avenue and 163rd Street on the beach on the north end. And we had aquariums actually on top of speakers and in there with loud music. And that was one of the questions they had. Would the music affect the fish? I'm sure the fish got an earful. And go to a lot of really nice places. This is obviously a 70s photo from somebody's home. I currently, at this point, work for about 6 or 7 different billionaires with really significant aquariums in their homes and offices and businesses. But this is the way the aquarium trade started in South Florida. And I can remember as a kid servicing many of these aquariums into even the beginning of the 80s, and certainly with my dad throughout the 70s. This was on the Outrigger Club at 135th and Biscayne. I serviced that. It was a 4-sided tank in a new building that went up. This was at Jack Levine's house on Key Biscayne, super successful guy. And there it is, the aquarium on the shag carpet on the floor. So really funny. Oh yeah, that's when Jolene met me, I think, somewhere around, I'm gonna guess I'm 17 or 18. And this was a double bubble goldfish tank that I took care of at a place on the downtown Miami. And then Jolene and I met and we dove. First date we had was actually out diving off of, on Columbus Day, off Elliott Key in 1980. I'm gonna guess it was October 12th of 80. This was, I think, in St. Thomas, this photo. We've traveled and dove together our entire lives, basically. There's Jolene at the baths in Tortola, Virgin Gorda, down near the Virgin Islands. But the El Concord down there at that time was really intense. I'm going to guess this is maybe 83, 84. I did aquariums in Tortola as well. This was glass tank building, which we still do to this day. I used to build them upside down. We changed that over. We build them right side up. But that way the bottom was always flush and level, and you could level the glass up real well and then flip it over. And of course, we do the same thing, put them on styrofoam. That's probably I'm going to guess a 480 gallon. Here's the old trade show booth from the mid 80s, maybe 84. But you can see every aquarium is dead coral, static environments, undergravel filters, or reverse flow. That was the technology at that time. And I would go do home shows, and of anybody in the country, I've done easily more shows than I would say anybody, setting up aquariums at trade shows for a weekend, for a week, for a couple days, and all over the place. Here's Panama in the mid-80s again. We had air pumps that went through the bottom of the aquarium. I built 7 aquariums in Panama right before Noriega fell. I remember building the first aquariums in the McDonald's, the first McDonald's in Central or South America was in Panama. And as we were leaving, the government was putting the place under, I guess, Delta or Charlie, because they were going to, I think, kicked Noriega out is what happened. But I was there for that. Again, many, many static aquariums. And you can see the big pieces of elkhorn for Roxanne's benefit there. Most of that was coming out of Haiti or Dominican Republic, and Barry from Worldwide Imports, if anybody knows him, used to bring entire containers, 40-footers, with the coral stacked all the way down, and you'd open the door and you'd be like, oh my God, what is that smell? And it was all brown or, you know, drying out staghorn. And then he bleached it out in big vats and sold it across the country to every fish store and all over the place. But huge amounts of elkhorn, entire containers filled with it, and pillar coral. And that was literally, I'm going to guess that was in the early 80s still. It was still legal to get it from there. Here's another one with stainless steel finish. That was on a hotel in Miami Beach I did. Residential, that's I think one of the only freshwater tanks on display. But you know, thousands of aquariums I've been involved with through the years. This was in attorney's office in Miami. That top of the desk used to flip up and service the aquarium. I don't know what it is. People, how many people put their aquariums on the floor anymore? Very rare that you actually see that. Here's one with a mahogany stand that I built. But you'd get these huge pieces of coral from the guys in I can't remember the place, Bob would know, in LA, Seven Seas, I don't remember who it was over there. South Seas. Yeah, years ago. And the Pacific stuff we'd buy, Barry would bring it in, we'd just buy it from him. But that's what we did for so many years. This was in a place on the ocean in Hollywood. This was John Z at East Ocean Restaurant, right across from Gulfstream Racetrack. Many years ago, I put lobster tanks in there and this big room divider aquarium. The bottom was one piece. I remember building that in the restaurant as the restaurant was coming up. Again, dead coral. Nothing live about it other than the fish. This was a doper who, that's right, a drug dealer, who had a house and had a tremendous amount of money. I remember the feds coming and taking that all away. But he had a huge aquarium. I can't remember his name right now. I'll think about it. This is the mid-'80s. But when a guy was paying you in cash at that time, you got to figure out where was the money coming from. But it was a big aquarium, really big. Fiberglass with a glass front. This was in Jose Pina's house in Coral Gables. Riccadelli was an insurance guy in San Souci. This was a beautiful aquarium. They had me take the corals when you had to clean them. We would take them and put them in his pool, and the chlorine in the pool would just clean the corals up, and then you'd rotate corals out of the aquarium. This was in Jim Athens' house down on Stock Island. This was the actual railing to go upstairs. I had to be 42 inches high to be code height. And again, dead static corals. We had the water we would draw in from the waterway at his house. That was 90, I'm going to call that 89, 1990. Wim Verkaden was a tropical fish collector. He used to catch more Cuban hogs than anybody in the state, and this is at his house. I did that one for him. This was one of the exotic aquaria tanks that I had with a big lionfish on the back etched into the glass. Fire coral, elkhorn, pipe organ coral. I can't remember the purple and the pink hydrocorals. I think they were from deep water. This was BM, before marriage, I think. This is Rosenstein's, Charlie Rosenberg's house. But you can see the live rock pieces that were stacked in there. Those were just pieces of rubble from probably Sombrero at that time. It really wasn't a live tank, but a Fowler type aquarium. And there we are, years later, a couple years later. I'm going to guess that's 89 or 90. Jolene had our first child, Jackie, and you can see a full-blown reef tank there. And that was at maybe the Florida Marine Aquarium Society show, probably a Miami Beach Convention Center show, but that was a living reefs in the very, very beginning. That's the Achua family from All Seas Fishery in Miami. Boy, I look a little strange in there, but look at that hair. Look at Jolene's hair. My goodness. And the kids got immersed into aquariums at a very young age. And into 91, bam, I think this is 1991, they shot photos of me collecting live rock for the cover of Audubon magazine. And I was bold enough to tell them I had to spend an entire day out to do this and charge them for the photo. They originally want me to take the photo inside the 7 Mile Bridge with the 7 Mile Bridge in the background with me standing on a sandbar by the 7 Mile Bridge. And I told them that that was illegal. I could only collect the live rock in federal waters. And if I took the photo in front of the 7 Mile Bridge, it would look pretty like I'm collecting the rock at the 7 Mile Bridge. So this was actually shown at Delta Shoals right off Key West, so everybody knows that location. But I drove the boat down, and he says, oh, we gotta wait till sunset, we get better light. And I drove back at dark, Frank would know, with Loran Sea at that time. You just kind of drive up Hawks Channel and go into Marathon, hope you don't hit anything along the way. This was the guy that owned Blockbuster, Bernard, I believe, or Berard, Steve Berard's house. He was the second in command of Blockbuster when Blockbuster first started. This was at his house. And you can see that was live rock we were collecting in the Keys at that time. Another big house on Key Biscayne with a 1,000-gallon reef tank, large gorgonians, all stuff we collected ourselves. This is Bert Hunter's place over on Fisher Island. This was when Julian was working for me at that time. And we really decked that aquarium out. He had an unlimited budget. I think he went to federal prison for money laundering in Japan and other areas. This was another super wealthy guy out of Venezuela. I believe he was in the oil industry. This was in a high-rise in Coconut Grove. And that's Julian in the background with a flat top when he did have hair way back when. But yeah, we did some really neat projects. Mark Silverman's house, probably early 90s again. Another residential one in Coral Gables, working with different companies. This was Mo Cerise up in Delray Beach. Some of these leather corals were the leather corals that actually went to ORA when we started ORA up, and we were fragging those when we got the coral farm going at ORA many years ago, probably 97, 98 at that point. This guy had the largest Lolique glass collection in the world, and he had just a tremendous aquarium, beautiful millwork up there. So we started building the really large ones in stainless steel frames. This is a residential tank that I built, and there's a whole set of process photos of this tank being built in the glass house. He had an overhead boom, so we'd pick up the big pieces of glass and build them right in his shop in Medley. There's the tank going together with silicone. There's the glass puller on top. There's your frames that we put the glass into. And that's how we deliver them, out on a flatbed truck, suck them up like it's a car, and go right to the job site, and bam, there's a crane. At this point, I've probably done, I can't tell you, 30, 40, at least 40, maybe 50 crane deliveries with very large aquariums. The tank was so big we had to put the forklift in the house just to move it around. So that's a good one. That's the first time I ever moved a forklift by crane. And then there's the box, super heavy. And what you don't see in this photos is two guys standing on the back of this forklift to keep it level because it was wanting to dip forward. So I put the two biggest guys in the back and we put it on top of the concrete base. And then here's a rock stack on the inside, a lot of branch rock, live rock. This is again sometime early 90s. And it was Mr. Beagleman, who owned Mars Music at that time, was a music concern, selling guitars and whatnot, but he had a hell of a house on Hillsborough Mile in Florida. It's another one, round glass aquarium. There's the millwork that we design. We do a lot of CAD designs and drawings with all that, work with millwork suppliers. And here's a piece of half-round laminate Starfire glass, very expensive. And when you get it in, you just basically build it in the crate. Makes it a little bit easier and you're really safe from moving the glass. It's a little unwieldy. It's a little difficult to deal with the glass. But this is how we build them. This one, I think, was built upside down as well. Some clamps on there, and then there's the bottom with the holes drilled, ready to go on top. And then here's the tank on the stand. And different process photos. There's our son, Joe Turner, when we did the freshwater test on the system. And here I go getting into the job to stack the rock, basically. So you get into the aquarium, you stack it all up, and this is probably, I'm going to guess this is probably 99, something like that, 2000. inside of it. We have a really great finish shot of this one as well. That was in G Money's house, Gary Carroll's. This is some filtration rooms. This is in Red Bank Veterinary Hospital. I would usually start putting, when I have the space underneath a place, I'll be able to put in a coral lab. I'll do that kind of stuff, or quarantine areas. This aquarium is still running this minute. Residential, lots of really detailed filtration systems, water change systems. This is the filtration system for the big jellyfish tank we have at Stake 954 in Fort Lauderdale, down in the basement. Again, residential reef, lots of detail, nice refugium, lots of healthy fish, and a stack of live rock. This is a pump room down in Marathon on a beautiful aquarium we have at residential down on Flamingo Island. This one's in Palm Beach. You could see the old lights from Ike, cannons, and really a beautiful reef tank. These, I think, Matt Wittenrich at a time was taking photos for me. These are photos from Matt, I believe. And there's the upper side of that particular tank. And then here's that other one. Had a teak deck on the back of it, really beautiful. This guy just sold that house, and the new owners were managing it there. Here's the back side of the Smithsonian. That was produced about 12 years ago now. That was when it was brand new. And you get some behind the scenes looks at it. That was a stainless steel service rack in the back, powder coated. Here's the big sump that I had custom made for the back corner. Again, still functioning really super well. The Smithsonian is just a great example of the technological changes that have happened through time. I can remember having, I'm guessing it was Justin came over from Ecotech, and we put a couple of MP60s on it when they were first developed on the outside to increase the flow, because that technology wasn't in place when I put the Smithsonian together 13 years ago. But it's a classic aquarium that is just a mass of calcium carbonate. I recently was contacted from them. They're considering taking it down because it's so overgrown and refitting it again. And that's only in 12 years. So that's something you have to plan on when you build a huge reef tank. You got to plan on, okay, what's going to happen then? And you just got to ask just Joe. That's right, Joe Waiulu can tell you. You got to farm it. And it grows like weeds. But at the Smithsonian, you have to get permission to take and harvest the corals from the veterinarian. It's different working for the federal government. In your own home, you just whack it and don't worry about it. But there, you got to get a committee together. You got to talk about it. You spend a couple $1,000s talking about it, and then finally you get the okay to do it. But you can't even take a fish and technically euthanize it unless you're using MS-222. You got to get that certified by the veterinarian as well. So being a home aquarist is a little bit easier. Big unicorn. This is probably, I don't know, maybe these photos are 6 years ago of the Smithsonian. Just fabulous. This is from above. Phil from Reefscapes takes care of it. He has for the last about 9 or 10 years. And you can see from above how beautiful it was. It is now switched all to LED lights. And when he called me and asked me about taking it down, I told him don't. Because it's a big undertaking with them. You got to take everything out and move it to an isolated location. You got to manage it, maintain it, and then bring it back in. My guess would be 6 months to do the whole thing from start to finish. But there's a luxurious coral growth at the surface of the aquarium. Here's a more recent one that we delivered about 2.5 years ago to the Surf Club residences in Miami Beach. It's about a 1,800 gallon acrylic reef that we got trucked in, came from California. The stand we had produced here in Florida, and the first thing you always do with the crane is deliver the stand first. Don't take the heaviest thing up. But this went into the 8th floor, cantilevered over the railing. They built a big rack inside the unit, and it's always a lot of fun. So here's the aquarium going up. That weighed about 4,000 pounds. And as it's going in, I say to myself, okay, good, we're going to get a check. Because if you drop it, there is no payment. So once you deliver it, it's a really good day. So we delivered it in sideways to fit it in, and slid it into the house with the contractors. And then we had to erect the unit back up and flip it up. That was a challenge too, in a very short 9-foot ceilings or 9.5-foot ceilings in this unit. This is another really large one from 2 years ago. This is in Atlanta, private residential reef aquarium. This one's price tag was about 600 grand on our side. The owner has $1 million into it. So I did a big rock stack with Marco Rocks. That's all free stack. There is no glue. Typically, I don't really use glue. Sometimes I use the mortar that they have to put it together. But I like the stacking. There's a big cave inside of there, and then there's the pump room in the beginning. I think right when the salt water is just running in there. And then here's the refugium, maybe another month or two later. It's actually a Kato spinner, I call it. I get a spray bar in the back and get the current going, and it spins the Kato. It's really cool because the Kato is always spinning, so it really grows well and fast. Gets a lot of even light over it. There I am going diving in the tank. So we go up 2 days a month to Atlanta and dive in the aquarium and do detail work in the aquarium and trade that back and forth. And then the guys at Premier Aquatics in Atlanta do the majority of the daily service, which is actually 3 days a week. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they're always there. There's our son, Joe Turner, in the tank. It's kind of funny, but it's doing super well now. There's a little bit of alkalinity issues. We did buy a Triton with it recently and have that hooked up, and it's really nice, super stable alkalinity now. But with a 6,000 gallon, you really, like anybody knows with a reef tank, you have to have it stable. And then here's a lot of images of finished products. I have several books back there, rad books. Anyone can take them. We printed several thousand of them, so they're there for free. And please do take Chemi Pure because I don't want to take anything home with me. This is in Red Bank Veterinary Hospital. We flew that one in by crane years ago. This is a really stunning reef. It's just fabulous. That's been, they had an open, like a dome ceiling that was with natural light. And the other people that had bid on the project told them they can't do that because the natural light's just going to grow algae and make things terrible. And I'm like, that's the exact opposite of what really needs to happen. Natural light is really good for an aquarium as long as there's stable temperature involved. Another residential, Miami Beach, actually Venetian Causeway. This is a great freshwater cichlid tank. And this young guy's place is just stunning. The photo, this is Matt Wittenrich took this photo. And that particular aquarium now is in my office with cichlids. I actually have cichlids in my office now. And they're easy, super easy to do. This is Miami Children's Museum. This is an Atlantic aquarium with a mangrove estuary that we did about 14 years ago. Big jellyfish aquarium in Lexington, Kentucky. That's in a restaurant. These guys own 35 Cheddar's restaurants, and they decided they're going to do their own restaurant, spent $10 million on it, and closed it down 3 years later in Lexington. So I think they realized that's not the market to open this big, beautiful restaurant, beautiful place. But I think to this minute it's sitting empty. So people will do a lot to get a big aquarium. That one flew in by crane too. This is a really unique pond, 9/11 Ocean. Yeah, I think it's 9/11 Ocean in Delray Beach, with an acrylic walkway going in over the koi pond. So we designed filtration, set it all up. Really spectacular place. Unbelievable house. You can see the koi in there. This guy sold this house for $35 million, I think. It's another client with jellyfish. So I got into jellyfish kind of happenstance. This next particular tank was the first jellyfish tank I ever built. That was 11 years ago. And I took the guy, who was a designer out of France, a restaurant designer, and this gal who worked for them had never been to America. I was out lobster diving that day. They flew in. They wanted to go see aquariums and talking about this jellyfish tank in this restaurant at Steak 954 in Fort Lauderdale. And I showed them beautiful reef tanks. I'm thinking, God, I'm going to get a 2,000 gallon reef tank on the ocean in Fort Lauderdale and sell the hell out of reef tanks. And we toured around. I showed him a jellyfish tank from Living Color. And at the end of the evening, he goes, Jeff, those aquariums are so beautiful, but we have to have jellyfish. We must be jellyfish. And I said to whatever the guy's name is, Philippe, I think, I said, well, Philippe, jellyfish it is. So for $250,000 later, bam, I'm building my first jellyfish tank. And I looked at so many of them because I've been through, you know, dozens and dozens of public aquariums worldwide. And I thought, wow, they really need more flow. And so I designed it with a lot more flow and flow on the bottom and flow all over. And this thing is flawlessly operating now for over 10 or 11 years. And it's the main attraction. If you look up Steak 954 online, you'll see photos of this jellyfish tank. People love it. It's well known for that. So since then, I've obviously built hundreds of jellyfish tanks and sold thousands of them when I bought Jellyfish Art. And we have our own jellyfish propagation in our new building with a state-certified aquaculture lab. Residential reefs, another residential in Palm Beach. It's the other side of it. So these are what I call money shots. This is in a guy's place who saw the Steak 954 and had to have one in Fort Lauderdale. We use these in different advertising and Florida design and online and whatnot. Another jellyfish tank. Very popular. People love them. And I love them too because they're spineless and brainless. It's true. And they just take on whatever color you put in there. They're pretty basic. You have to feed them though. And I'm talking food. You've got to feed them all the time. They really need to eat. As you know, or Frank knows, many of us are divers as well. You get in the water and you look at a jellyfish, they're full of food always. They're always full. You never like see them with no food in their gut. So feeding them, to me, was probably one of the most important aspects. This is another referral. This is a referral out of MJ, out of Jupiter. We're in Michael Jordan's house a couple days a month, but we can't take photos of his aquarium, of course. So this was one of his buddies he goes golfing with. There's another residential up in Stewart, reef tanks. This guy was Cafe Pilon. It's a 1,000-gallon reef that we take care of. It's really spectacular in his home. Here's a home on Miami Beach with mangroves. This was a koi pond at one time. They wanted salt water, so we converted it, and I used planters and Marco rock on the top deck there to make it look natural and really spectacular. This one is actually in Marathon, only a few miles from here. This aquarium is now running about 10 years, and here's a close-up of it. Really spectacular. It's probably the nicest reef tank in the entire Florida Keys. I don't know a lot of hobbyists down here in the Keys, but I'm sure there's a couple really nice ones too. But this house is currently for sale. And then we go to the office. This aquarium, this is a great story. So the aquarium that's currently in our office is a 1680. I just filled it up last week with salt water. We put this aquarium, built it in the shop. You can see the platform. We usually, when we build a tank that big, we'll build it on a dedicated platform, then crate it up and deliver it out by crane. And these are the images of that delivery. There's the welded stainless steel stand. Here's the delivery to the house by crane. We got great drone footage of this and everything. But there's the truck and trailer and the crane picking it up, coming in towards the front landing. And then there is the tank on the front landing before it slid in through the front doors. So the great story is this tank was delivered. 5 days later, the owner's wife flies in, comes in from Chicago. She said a few four-letter words to the owner and the builder, or her husband and the builder, and said, this tank is too big, you got to get it out of here. I think it's a $180,000 install. So he called up and asked us, can you guys make it smaller? Cut it down. I'm like, no, it's in frames. We can't cut the glass and rebuild it. Plus, it's already delivered by crane. He says, well, what can you do? I said, well, we can make another one. So we gave him an estimate, I think 60 grand, and gave him a $20,000 credit for the old tank. And it's sitting in this is it in our showroom now. So I built the new tank, delivered the new tank, took it off the trailer with the crane, put it on the side, brought out the old new tank and put it on the trailer, and then put the new tank back in the house, and then brought it back to the showroom, and JR said to me, what are you going to do with it? I'm like, we're going to put that thing in the flipping showroom. Are you kidding me? In the new place, nobody's crazy enough to put in a 2,000-gallon in the aquarium business as a full-blown reef. So here's process shots of it in place. There's the big long sump underneath, and pushing in the sump all the way through. And at this point, it was really challenging to get it in there, but we got it in. And when you push down the length, I didn't have any baby powder. That's a really great trick, is baby powder on the foam. It actually slides the glass really well. You can see the holes for the MP60s on there. There's the guys after we got the one sump in, and then the secondary sump went in place too. So here it is now with the beginning of the millwork. I've got a really great stack of Marco Rock that are basically custom cut. So they got me some big slabs. I marked them off. We used some sort of a jackhammer to chip it all up and make it look really great with some great arches. And there's only 8 contact points in the bottom of this 1680. So all the rock is really elevated off the floor of the tank. Here's another image of it showing these plateaus. So what I envision is it's really, like any large reef tank, it's a real long-term approach. From here, you got to look at this for 10 years when you start this big of a project. Can't think about it for this year or next year. It's got to go 10 years out. So here's the radions. We just put 12 radions up at 25 inches above the water height. I called Vic at Worldwide Corals and talked to him about it too. And he has several aquariums as well with the lights up higher, because the radions just have such tremendous output. You don't need to run them at 100% because the tank is deeper. We have the one in Atlanta is 85 inches of water. Those lights are about, I'm going to call it 16 inches, maybe 12 inches even above the surface in some areas, but those lights we still only run at 70 to 80% to still get a par on the bottom at close to 200. And that's another thing, obviously check your par meter when, working with this big of an aquarium. So I'm putting the sand in. This is last week, Tuesday. And there's the lights. I've got my pun hat on Making Aquariums Great Again that's blue. I'm certainly not politically motivated with that, but it's a blue hat, not a red hat. So it's my MAGA aquarium hat. I put in a little retaining wall in the back. I did this in some of the bigger tanks too, while I use the smaller sand, but when you get so much current when you use the smaller grade sand, it blows out too much. You're always having to deal with that or put bigger rock in. But that's actually Julian's smaller grade reborn gravel in the front area of it. Eddie was asking me earlier, am I going to do it a bare bottom? I said, no, it's very rare. It's hard to find a client that says, oh, let's do a bare bottom tank. Most clients we have likewise aren't necessarily looking for a frag. They're looking for a coral. So those are some of the challenges when you're building large aquariums for people's homes or offices. There's the salt water going in. There it is at halfway. Well, you can see the 8 MP60s on there. It's got some great flow, just tremendous. I didn't turn it all the way up yet. There's no fish in. Probably 2 or 3 weeks I'll put nothing in it. I plan on putting all the live rock that we put in this aquarium in the sump down below, not in the tank. So we'll let coralline algae grow into the aquarium over time and intentionally not put the live rock in on top of the Marco rock. That'll all just be planted corals. So if you swing by, we're open really 8 a.m. to certainly 5 or 6 even any given day. We give limited tours through the whole warehouse. But last week we had the Florida Marine Aquarium Society in. We had 65 people last Tuesday for their January meeting. It's really great fun. So here's the filtration room. Of course, we have all the Deltec equipment in there. Big aqua ultraviolet 100-watt sterilizer. There's a chiller with a 1.5-ton split unit in there too, though I don't really think I'm going to need chilling. I just put it in there just in case. There's a view down the end of that room. The doors will go on and we'll just keep finishing it. So we're going to do one more click, I believe, to see a video. Oh, I'm talking. We don't hear it. That's good. Point out that our team of experts does a fantastic job at building some of the finest marine reef and jellyfish aquariums in all of North America. We take a lot of pride in our work, and the passion with everybody involved with our business is they're just so enthused to go out and do tremendous work in creating these natural environments and a healthy environment for the fish and corals and organisms to thrive for years to come. One of the most iconic things about Fort Lauderdale Beach, obviously, is the beach itself, the ocean. And the W Hotel here is a big draw, opened about 10 years ago. And inside of the W, you'll find Steak 954, and we have this fabulous jellyfish aquarium that people love to see and they can't stop talking about.
Here we are at a penthouse in Fort Lauderdale in front of a 500-gallon tank. This reef tank's been set up for 10 years, and what I love about this tank is it's a model of long-term sustainability. All these fish and corals have been growing and doing well for the better part of a decade. As you can see, everybody's thriving and doing well, happy, colorful. What else can you really ask for?
As you see here behind me, it's a perfect example how everything is symbiotic relationship and how they're actually working with each other. We have the Florida Recordia, the different Doresa clams. There's 2 of them in this tank, and they look beautiful. You have all the fish working in harmony. We, as a company, really thrive in quality. We always strive to have the best aquarium possible.
Today we're looking at a 450-gallon bent glass reef aquarium system. It's comprised of 1-inch Starfire laminate curved glass front, and it's really stunning. It's got great coral growth, some of the original fish from the client who had them in his original 150-gallon reef aquarium, and we added a whole bunch more reef-friendly fish and corals, and you can see at this point that it's growing tremendously and doing super well. And today we have a natural reef here that's all collected off of Miami Beach and out front of Key Biscayne, all aquaculture live rock, aquaculture seahorses. And it's really beautiful and educational, and thousands of kids from Dade County schools come here every year and learn all about ocean life and how to conserve and protect it for the next generations. This particular jellyfish aquarium is a see-through that's put spatially into this incredible home. We designed it to be elevated enough to see through at a tall level in through the kitchen, into the cigar lounge, and it's really stunning. It's been up and running for about a year now. It was something else getting it in the house. Very heavy. We had to carry it through the front doorway and into the space and then put it onto the dollies and lifted it in here. It's about 420 gallons and it's really doing textbook. This is now our 12th year of building jellyfish, custom jellyfish aquariums, and we've gotten really good at it and love how beautiful and simple they really are. So yeah, lots of reef tanks, lots of jellyfish tanks. If you want a really significant reef aquarium, we're happy to do that. We could also sell you some ChemiPure, some Deltec. I can't tell you how many things we have, but a lot. And you know, it all came from growing up as a kid here in South Florida, catching tropicals and holding them in our aquariums. And you know, you got to do your best you can with any animal that you get to, you know, keep it alive and give it the best environment that you possibly can. If you win the lottery and you want a really big tank, call me. So any questions?
Anybody? Guys, don't be shy. It only takes one person to raise a hand and then everybody starts. Here we go. Coming up. Yes, sir.
Jeff, can you still collect in Florida, and collect fish in Florida, and what do you need to do that?
You really, as a recreational collector, can collect up to 20 organisms. It's all on the MyFWC's website, what you can catch. There's certain sizes on angelfish. You know, it's 20 organisms. So if you went to go catch snails, you could legally catch 20 Astrea snails or 20 blue leg hermits, but you can't catch 20 of everything. So I don't know that you need a recreational fishing license, do you, Frank? I think so, right? So you just need that. But commercially, there's only about, my understanding is maybe 70 to 100 of us left that actually have a limited entry fishery license that's either personal or you have both that's attached to your vessel as well. So you can't catch live rock. If you get live rock, it's got to be aquacultured. Philip is here in the room back there. He has Ken Niedermeyer's original site where him and his wife are harvesting rock there. Gorgonians you can catch as well. Recordia, again, single polyp is a special thing. You can't take it on any attached substrate or rock. You know, all sorts of things. Flame scallops, banded coral shrimps, all that kind of stuff are legit to catch. But the best thing to do is look at the MyFWC website, look at the current regs that are there, and follow the rules. Very important. You're welcome.
Anybody else? Next. Oh, yes. Yes, easy.
A tank, like the surf club condo,
Yep.
and the weight of a tank so large, what process do you have to go through with like the condo association? And what do you find the weight limits are when you're going up?
Well,
you know,
that particular building is a post-tension slab. We will provide the information to the architect builder of record and get that certified by them before we move forward in any way, shape, or form. You have to. So we send a letter, and then copy all the parties that are involved, including the owner, and get them to comment back on it. Once the engineer clears it, we're good. Now that particular tank, I don't have a photo of it in here. It's maturing super well. I put some of the Aqua Roche stuff in there, the ceramic rock from France. And it's tall, it's 65 inches. We put acrylic rods and they have holes formed into them before they put it into the kiln where they make that rock. And we stack the rock on there like that. The tank goes up to a bearing wall in the building. And we got them to put a floor drain in too, and that's always important. So if you're fortunate enough to get in contact with an owner who's in the process when the house is being built or the project's getting built, you designate this stuff out and they certified it. So I have, 16,000 pounds of water weight upstairs in their unit that's certified from the architects. And it'd be a hell of a show if the floor collapsed. It's a lot of water, and water is really scary. High rises especially. You know, if you have floor drains, very important. But water just seeks its own level. You know, if you drop 100 gallons on the floor, you'd be amazed how much area it would cover. It might cover, you know, a greater part of this room if the room's level, like a 1/4 of an inch. I mean, it's a lot of water. So that's a big, dangerous thing you have to deal with, and make sure you have really good insurance. That's important too. So we carry a few $1 million of liability insurance. I have professional liability insurance as well, and more insurance than most people can think of. I don't know, at this point, maybe 150 grand a year for everything we do, cars, trucks, buildings, you name it, all of it.
Anybody else? No one? Anybody? Somebody? All right, Jeff, I think that's it.
Okay.
If you guys do not have new life goals after seeing that, then I don't know what to tell you. That was an epic presentation.
Thank you.
Unbelievable stuff. Thank you so much for sharing with everybody the history and what you guys do today. Rad, amazing, amazing, amazing stuff. So
lots of fish bowls.
there you go. All right, guys, Jeff will be around. If you have any more questions for him, feel free to grab him. I'm sure he'll share any information with you. Again, Kemi Pure on the back table. He doesn't want to take it home, so I don't